wind of change is blowing through this continent. Whether we like it or not, this gross national consciousness is a political fact. We must all accept it as a fact. And our national policies must take account of it. You understand this better than anyone. You are sprung from Europe, the home of nations. And here in Africa, you have yourselves created a free nation, a new nation. Indeed, the history of our times, yours will be recorded as the first of the African nations.
Harold Macmillan's wind of change blew for 34 long years and left a withered, emaciated continent in its wake. Famine soon reigned, as well as dictatorship. Railway lines deteriorated and harbours closed. From being food exporters, many African countries were now crying out for help. Without their natural import facilities, landlocked African countries were now forced to look south. South Africa's harbours and its sophisticated network of railways became the gateway to Africa north of the Limpopo. Those were the dark paria years. Africa had but little choice. Things were so bad that border posts like Beitbridge and Messina operated as separate entities. In operations that would take up to 3 hours at a time, trains were checked, first at Messina and then again a kilometre further by Zimbabwean technicians. A silly and unnecessary duplication of tasks. But is this still the case? Are we still hurting each other while trying to help one another? The answer is no. Since a few weeks ago, there were no more duplication of tasks. Everything is done jointly now. This was our first surprise, with more to follow. 2 months after the birth of the new South Africa, an intrepid, all-white South African film team embarked on a venture which only a few months ago would have been deemed impossible. Armed with little more than foolish courage, our cameras, and enough food and water to last us most of the way, our small group of new South Africans decided to do something that has never been done before. To put Africa's trade routes, its railway services, and the goodwill of its people to the test. To hitch our private railway coach, courtesy of Spoornet, to the first goods train going north and further north. Countless hitches and many goods trains later, we finally did discover the end of the line. This is the story of that journey. But more so, it is the simple story of an artery that has been kept open against all odds. Throughout the dark years of apartheid, South Africa's trains travelled quietly up along the spine of Africa to countries as far north as Zaire. It is said that at least 30 African countries were so dependent on this system of arteries flowing from South Africa through Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia to Zaire, that without it, their economies would have collapsed.
Your wife, you put them on your door, your books, anywhere.
This man is a carriage and wagon examiner, and his job is to ensure the roadworthiness of every carriage. His little hammer has just detected a possible loose tire on one of our wheels. A dull sound could spell potential disaster. An exploding wheel can derail a train, a prospect we weren't exactly looking forward to, considering the distance we still had to travel. Steam trains, romantic as they may seem, are about to be phased out completely, even in Zimbabwe. Inhibiting costs, environmental factors and the introduction of diesel units has put an end to these majestic old iron horses of colonial days long gone by. Still, we felt sadly privileged, being passing witnesses to the last hours of an era that took the world and Africa by storm more than a century ago. Diesel locomotives are real monsters in the transport business. They weigh over 100 tons and can pull up to 35 fully loaded trucks at a time. And their drivers, they are special people. They are the people the railway bosses depend on to keep these lines open. Hitchhiking into Africa with 78 tons of steel on wheels, a four-wheel drive vehicle and a generator was met with surprisingly casual acceptance. Zimbabwean hospitality was overwhelming, and we were even allowed on the footplate, that is, inside the locomotive, generally sacred ground for outsiders.
You see what happens? Most of those trains are run through, you know. Now this one is like for recording what each siding has got. So where this guard, you know, every time we see a truck, we stop. It takes the details. Yeah. Every time we get where the siding is clear, just push clear. When it gets to the next open station, that will be Somers. It's going to hand you these documents there. And then tomorrow, well, they're all slashed into the computer, that information, and they know what's the position in their sidings. Then they know which one to clear, which one not to clear, or what's taking place in the sidings. You will be running through, you know. You won't be stopping to get all that information. Yeah. Because you have put it inside.
With great aplomb, we were told that this is the third longest straight stretch of railroad track in the world, and it certainly looked like it. Following the liberalization of the traditional colonies in Africa, aid finance, or development assistance for African countries, especially in the areas of economic and social infrastructure, became big business for countries like the United States, Japan, Belgium, Sweden, and others. Many of the locomotives we hitched were part of an aid package from some donor country, like this one from the United States, on our way to Delhi, Sawmills, Thompson Junction, and Victoria Falls. We experienced the first suspicious glances and the first of many delicately probing questions. Who were we? Why a fancy caboose behind a grimy goods wagon? And the flags? What's with the flags? The further north we traveled, the more questions we answered. Questions about the elections, the availability of work, about money and help from South Africa. It was time for a crew change. From here on, the track traveled more or less straight through Wankie Game Reserve to Thompson Junction, one of the important marshalling yards for north and southbound rail traffic. From here on, the scenery changes dramatically. Tropical palm trees with a faint line of African bush as far as the eye could see. This route passes through the Wankie Nature Reserve, and game crossing the single railway line is a constant danger to themselves and the daily passenger train running between Bulawayo and Victoria Falls. It wasn't long before we too fell foul of a herd of zebra crossing the line. Our driver was visibly upset. If he could have stopped the train, he would have. How do you stop over 100 tons of steel in less than 50 meters, charging down on a flustered herd of zebra at 60 kilometers per hour? death in the air and the animals were perplexed. There was no damage to the loco and little was left of the dead zebra. A strange quietness moved in like an invisible fellow traveller and accompanied us all the way to Victoria Falls. The last passenger train for all those travelling to Zambia and beyond pulls into Victoria Falls Station. No passenger trains pass over the bridge from Zimbabwe into Zambia. For these people, this means a walk of up to 12 kilometers across the border to Livingstone. From here on, the team will have to rely on a locomotive from Zambia and goods trains passing through to take them north. Finally, our crew is complete with the arrival of Pierre, our production manager. He will be sorely needed, because the real Africa, so people tell us, starts just across the border. The falls also meant replenishment time for the team, and for that the four-wheel drive had to come off its flatbed. This was our last freshwater stop, and food is still relatively cheap in Zimbabwe. Goods trains from here into Zambia run infrequently, and we were told a wait of at least a day, perhaps two, is not uncommon. For the rest, there were sights to be seen and thrills to be had.
Counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
A sunset cruise at Victoria Falls, and our crew meets up with another new South African bunch on their way to Nairobi. 94 people, some of them families and others single, all bent on reaching Nairobi together in the strangest assortment of vehicles. We met Simon Fourie, leader of this lot, and asked him what his safari is all about.
But what it is basically is we are cementing a friendship which started when South Africa became accepted. Now, we're accepted first and foremost by our neighbours, and they are very important to us. You know, all our neighbours up north, all the way up to Nairobi. And all it is, we're sort of consummating a marriage, as it were. We're part of the consummation of this friendship theme. You know, we're not really friends until we've met the people. So we got all these people together, families, children from 3 years old onwards, and we're traveling up to Nairobi and we're making friends all along the way. And it's with motorcycles, motor cars, buckies, you name it, aeroplanes, the whole tutu. And we're making friends. As we go up, we sort of make friends. I like to think of it as a cementing of a friendship which started when South Africa was accepted by everybody.
There seems to be a new urge among South Africans, especially white South Africans, to reach out and touch and meet fellow Africans. And this urge takes them on hazardous journeys spanning not only countries in Africa, but our entire continent. It's as if Harold Macmillan's winds have made an about turn and are now blowing fresh from the south, carrying new messages of hope for all Africans across the Limpopo. Day 6 of our journey, and we've had news of an approaching goods train which could, perhaps, take us into Zambia. The coach has been stocked with food and fresh water. All-wheel drive vehicle was the last to get on board, and we were ready and waiting.
No, keep it turning. Even nog kom. You're okay yet?
Our excitement soon evaporated when our loco somehow ran off the tracks, a seemingly common occurrence in these parts, and even more so the further north we travelled. We were well and truly stuck. Not a single phone was in working order, which resulted in urgent arrangements being made by means of our portable satellite phone, a useful instrument in these parts if there ever was one. From here on, this proved to be our only reliable means of contact with our base back in South Africa. That same night, news came through from Zambia. A loco's on its way. Zambian passport and customs officials obliged and came on board in Victoria Falls to clear us.
Thank you. Can we say goodnight to you?
No.
Thank you very much. We'll see you on the return trip.
Okay.
Thank you.
At last, we were moving again. A long, shaky night's train ride into day 7, and a first of many shunting stops along the way. We soon discovered what shunting is all about. Trains are being made up as they go along. The order in which these trains are hooked is important and is determined by its final destination en route.
This is one we use to test if the brakes are coming on properly on the whole train. It gives us the evidence that the pipes in which the air passes through are clear and they are not blocked. That's an assurance that we are going to have brakes on our way once the pipe is through. So this is a rubber washer. We use these to seal off and lessen any possible air leakages between the pipes. So once we attach it here, we affix it, at least we are assured that the air leakages would be minimized. Hence we'll get our required vacuum reading on the vacuum gauge. Normally, this is where the brake van is supposed to be attached. But because we don't have a brake van, we are going to use this gauge to show us the vacuum reading through the whole consist of the train. We've got enough vacuum clearance, which is now 22 inches. So our minimum is supposed to be 12, isn't it?
Yes.
Our minimum is 12, but once we are above 12 inches, then we know that our train is safe and we have the braking power required to stop the train at any point.
We asked our driver about the cooperation between Zambian and Zimbabwean railways. we were told that, in the spirit of negotiations currently underway between South Africa and Zimbabwe, Zambian railways too are hoping to introduce joint inspectors and possible through-working of locomotives and crews into each other's territories. Zambia's railway crews are surprisingly friendly and helpful, considering that Zambian Railways Limited is facing bankruptcy. These people haven't yet received their salaries for the previous month when we moved through there. The deeper into Zambia we moved, the more the condition of the tracks deteriorated and the slower the train travelled. Village life carries on normally all along the railway line. People are born, brought up and buried along this track. In Zambia, we saw no sign of the famine of 2 years ago, and soccer was the main occupation wherever we stopped. That and chewing African chewing gum.
And again they give it around. They've given the ball away too many times already for Arrigo Sacchi.
See that?
But this one must be green because this is tough as nails.
That's it. And then you chew that thing. It's very nice. It's really nice.
What do I do?
Just stick the whole thing in your mouth.
This whole thing with
Yeah, chew it.
the whole thing?
Chew it. Chew it. It's amazing.
I've never seen this.
Oh,
Where I come from in South Africa, we don't have this.
we don't have them.
No, we don't have them.
But here in Zambia, they have plenty.
Plenty of them in Zambia. In central Zambia, we came across the first signs of severe neglect. 30-year-old relics from colonial times were simply left where they stopped so many years ago. Now, people live in them. Wherever we stopped, our comparatively extravagant coach became the center of attraction. The film crew played host to policemen, railway crew, and anyone who cared for a beer or a cup of coffee. And wherever we stopped, we were welcomed as friends from the south, people from the land of plenty.
Looks like very beautiful lunch.
Yeah.
There's your beer. I see.
Yes.
This livestock that we're carrying, is that going up to...
It's going to Copper Belt.
Aha.
Market is available unless if someone.
Let's go in the cup.
For anyone wondering what this was all about, the answer is simple. Yet again, someone forgot to release the handbrake, and the film crew quickly had to become experts on coach mechanics. Better put it. Stand parallel with me. You'll see this thing goes down. It's just images of one of our wheels exploding at night due to metal fatigue, resulting in the crew and all their possessions flying off the tracks at 60 kilometers an hour, often flashed through our minds. On an average day, 1,482 wagons cross from South Africa into Zimbabwe, Zambia and Zaire. In 1993, about 5 million tons of goods were traded along these routes, with a total value of 800 million rand in transport and hire charges. In order to save what is left of Southern Africa's railways, Spoornet has finally managed to convince the managers of these railways to see themselves as components of a giant regional rail system, which would soon run an interlinked, scheduled service from Zaire to Cape Town. Not long ago, a goods train from Johannesburg would have taken 40 days to reach Ilebo, the physical end of the line in northwest Zaire. We were planning to do it in 11 days, as long as a normal goods train should take to get there. Soon, says Burnett, it should take only 7 days to complete the 2,300-kilometer journey. Now that the sanctions blockade has been lifted, says Burnett, Africa and South Africa can shed their cloak and dagger business disguises and get on with the job of building a subcontinental interlinking railway network that will one day pay its own way. Operating strictly as commercial enterprises and staying out of politics during the boycott years paid off in the end, says Burnett. Despite the sanctions blockade, South Africa had at peak level no fewer than 70 locomotives and 15,000 trucks in behind-the-scenes operations somewhere in Africa. The diary says Friday, July the 13th, and we are on a slow train heading for Kafulafuta, north of Kabwe. We pass under the lines feeding electricity from Cahora Bassa to Zaire and head for Zambia's once prosperous Copperbelt region. As if things aren't bad enough, Southern Africa's railways are fighting a foe in the form of road hauliers, who now carry the bulk of the cross-border road traffic. These hauliers thrived on rail's inefficiencies and now regard any cooperation among the rail systems as collision to transfer loads from road to rail. Kapiri Mposhi and the Great Divide. This is where the track veers off to become the notoriously neglected Tazara line to Dar es Salaam, 1,860 kilometers to the east. Yet again, the neglect. Simply listening to music becomes impossible with the din the wheels make in their effort to remain on the warped, uneven tracks. On September 23, 1993, a Johannesburg newspaper reported, South Africa and Zaire have established a joint office at Ndola on Zambia's Copperbelt to retrieve 1,482 wagons stuck in Zaire for more than 20 months because of political instability. The man running this joint office is Matthew Kabika-Senga, a multilingual whirlwind with a two-way radio. Yet again, the film crew was faced with a border crossing. This time into Zaire, the great unknown for us. The air and our notebooks was thick with rumors of lawlessness and corruption awaiting us. We weren't going to leave anything to chance, and Kabika-Senga, as he is known, had no intention of letting us down. Besides, he is a mine of information on anything related to the railways.
They are calling the custom officers. They'll come to the radio now. Then I'll talk to him to know what must be done. In terms of the equipment you have. Just the equipment that you have. Yes. What I want is him to see that you've got equipment and see the list, but you declare them, you clear them when you're in the rush. Oui, c'est bon, ici. D'accord, d'accord. J'aimerais un peu parler aux douaniers parce que j'ai une équipe qui vient de l'Afrique du Sud avec un matériel de photographie. Ils vont filmer le chemin de fer jusqu'à Inébo. Il faudra qu'il soit tracté par la locomotive que vous allez nous envoyer maintenant. J'aimerais savoir du douanier qu'est-ce qu'il doit faire comme formalité pour leur matériel à vous.
So the situation between here and Sekanya, now how far is Sekanya from here?
23 kilometers from here.
20 kilometers. And is there any border post that we've got to actually go to?
There is a border post which is at 13 kilometers from here. But it's the bush. You just see a panel which says Sakanya 0 kilometers, that's all.
We just drive through?
You just drive through. There's nothing.
So the very first time we're going to be clearing customs and immigration will be in Lubumbashi?
The first town, yes.
At this time, I can say Zaire is totally dependent on South Africa as much as food is concerned. Even Zambia itself, have you seen in the shops here, you've got all kinds of stuff coming from South Africa. They either come by rail or by road. If you look at the rare, we've got too much imports in Zaire from South Africa. That things that serve in mines like gas oil, like sulfur, like explosives. All these things come from South Africa. Then there is food stuff like sugar, like cement, and some other things. There's just too many. And on the other direction, you have copper, zinc, and cobalt going from Zaire, Zambia to South Africa. And we have maize coming from Zimbabwe to Zambia and Zaire. What you have behind here are wagons of copper from ZCCM, which is the mining company in Zambia. As you've seen, they're in Tazaran wagon. They're going to Dar es Salaam for export.
What can we expect in Zaire? I believe you told me that it is not safe. Why not? What is the situation we can expect?
No, the situation is quite well, but the problem is that, you know, when you are traveling with some goods which is looked at by people there, you know, some people attempt to get it back. That is why I asked you to have security men who can take care of your goods on your way going.
Tell us about the security men we're going to be getting.
Okay, that means when you will be at Sakanya, which is our first station, yes, from Zambia here, you will find that we have a station master there who will be advised by me before you arrive there to provide two or one man who can go with you. We will be on this wagon and the one who will take care of your goods up to Lubumbashi. When you will be at Lubumbashi, we'll find another team who will accompany you up to Kamina, and so far you will get some. Okay.
Well, will they have guns as well?
Yeah.
Will they have guns as well?
Yes, no problem.
Both Kabika Senga and Banza Kiseba were wrong. We never did travel right through to Lubumbashi. Instead, we were detained right here at Sakanya station for 18 hours, for no reason at all, with nothing to do but to film this man doing his Houdini number.
You give me no gift from Zaire, no gift. No picture for you.
Once we paid the customary gratuity, bakshish, a total of 800 rand, the train slowly started to move, right into bandit country. But that, of course, we didn't know. No one bothered to tell us. And a promised armed escort, they were nowhere to be seen. We were on our own. Ahead of us lay 255 kilometers of probably the worst railway track in Africa. We pulled out at a snail's pace and never traveled faster than 20 kilometers per hour. There are no passenger trains on this route, only goods trains, which very quickly became passenger trains as we rattled along. There is more to this scene than what meets the eye. From here on, this train, for all practical purposes, is under the control of whomever carries the AK-47. are passengers getting on, or rather on top of the train. Paying passengers. Again, they pay the guys with the guns, who, in turn for money or food, promises to protect them. And protection for the film crew wasn't long in coming. Within minutes of filming the scene, this film crew was arrested, stripped of our money and very nearly of our camera. All in French with barrels pointing at our faces. With weapons from Cuba and uniforms from all corners of the globe, representing a dozen or more revolutionary armies, our guests were volatile and unpredictable to the extreme. Photographs were allowed after only a while, and later Paul was allowed to roll the television camera. Following which, they helped themselves to our beer, our cigarettes, and even our election poster. What else can you do with an armed man but to humor him? We asked ourselves, who was playing dice with who?
Four. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right down. No. We haven't won yet. Combat.
All book, yeah.
3 a.m. and we've been under virtual siege now for over 10 hours. The train stopped for the umpteenth time to pick up passengers. Others helped themselves to some vacuum pipes. Once the rubber has been burned off, the metal inside makes ideal bed springs, we were told.
So what are they doing now?
Exhausted beyond description, the crew finally went to bed, only to wake up in the center of a scene from Dante's Inferno. An eerie quiet and vistas resembling the nightmare after a nuclear war, moments before the skies close up and the world blacks out. Elizabethville, now Lubumbashi, is a waste dump left behind when the last Belgian walked out and switched the lights off. He didn't even bother to lock up. Whatever remained was used until it collapsed and left where it stood to rot away. Lubumbashi is a scrap metal dealer's dream come true and an economist's worst nightmare. On February the 1st, this year, the World Bank announced that it had decided to close its offices in Kinshasa, adding that Zaire had been declared insolvent. All outstanding credit lines were cancelled with immediate effect. Shortly after this announcement, the International Monetary Fund threatened to expel Zaire and is now considering scrapping Zaire's voting rights. At the end of 1993, Zaire's economy was running at an inflation rate of 12,000%. Zaire's economy has been in a state of collapse for years. In their own words, there has been an alarming deterioration in the basic infrastructure, in social well-being, and the general standard of living. In short, what this translates into is this. People are walking the streets, begging for money and food. There is hardly any food to be bought, no work and no money. But what about telecommunications, the railroad further north, those basic things one needs to run an economy with? What about roads?
No roads, and the railway is at the very end, because people are not paid since months. They don't have wagons anymore, they don't have locals anymore. What went wrong, that is that I think that Zaire is a rich country. It was a rich country. But people have been taking all the benefits of this country for their own, giving nothing to the country.
This, it was clear, was the end of the line for the television team. But is this also the end of the line for organizations like Spoornet and others? Is there a solution that we don't know about?
The solution? I can't see a solution. Unless they get help from outside. Belgium, World Bank, and so on.
South Africa?
South Africa could help a lot if the President of South Africa and President Mobutu understand each other.
And what about the ordinary people? Not just the have-nots, of which there are many, but also those with a bit of standing in society, and even with a little bit of money, perhaps. Wherever we went, we saw an unsmiling, weary nation, people who have been exhausted by the burden of their country's follies. We had the impression of an entire nation on its knees, in desperate need of help, and with none or little coming. But in March this year, Business Africa announced that South Africa has entered into a barter agreement to rehabilitate Zaire's crumbling rail transport system. South Africa will supply locomotives, wagons, spares, and diesel in return for Zairean coffee and exotic hardwoods.
Your help to let's say, to sort out those problems we have.
The main task is help.
We have some problems here, and now if you can help us with goods from your country, it will be very, very good.
The situation in Lubumbashi with petrol and diesel is very important. We have plenty station, yes, but we have petrol and gasoil.
No petrol and
No petrol, no gasoil, and so forth.
So gas oil is my big problem at this stage. And when there's a shortage of gas oil, then normally you got no service. Then you got a plan to buy from firms such as Petro Katanga, etc.
After the colonists left, exploitation continued through the involvement of many so-called donors and consultants. Many of these organizations and individuals contributed to the downward slide of the economy, because few ever followed through. Due to a lack of money, these railway workers are receiving sacks of maize instead of cash. The size of the sack and amount of maize is in direct proportion to the number of dependents that needs to be fed. Despite these conditions, there are people in high positions who believe that Zaire has a lot to offer, especially to South African investors and tourists.
Avec plaisir.
With pleasure.
Je suis
It is, and of course, that I'd like to see South African tourists coming to Katanga province, since among the governors of this country, I am one of the governors who I go to South Africa every 2 months. So I'd like also to see businessmen, very important businessmen from South Africa, and also tourists coming from South Africa to come here for developing the economic and also the tourism in this province. And also what I'd like to stress is that the people, you see, we were waiting only the event. I mean, just the coming up of the new government in South Africa to boom up the economical development and relationship with South Africa.
The film team was welcomed by His Excellency, and to prove it, he gave permission in writing for us to film anywhere in Shaba province.
Mister.
Mister, 15 in the short. Mister, for you, how many people?
How much is it?
What is it? This one, 15,000.
Come here.
15,000.
Avec ça, monsieur.
The very next day, this team was arrested by officers from the Office of Immigration and Security, who revoked the governor's permission to film and technically placed us under coach or house arrest.
Si tu mets, je prends ça, je prends, c'est moi.
We were stranded in Lubumbashi. We couldn't film and we couldn't leave.
A derailment?
Yes, and now that is now between 10 and we're now going to be leaving between 10 and 12.
No, they told us now that your people might be only leaving tomorrow morning.
Oh, they said that?
Because the reason is the gas oil that was in the customs has been released in the night. A locomotive, OCS locomotive, took the gas oil through the night, took it up, and now the electric locomotive that's supposed to be taking the train is still not available. They're still waiting to come. So it could be late tonight, it could be tomorrow. You're only going to be... We have promised them 12 o'clock they're going to leave. They are not going to leave before tomorrow morning. That is our main problem at this stage. I don't know where you got your information from, but the information I have is definitely only tomorrow morning. Yes, it was caught in the customs. They have released that in the night. I've just been informed that they have sent a locomotive here early in the morning with the gas oil up to Camino for Dieter.
Hier kom nader. Hier kom nader met dit. And that's it.
Nine days after our arrival at Lubumbashi, and a number of emergency calls later, we were finally ready to head home. With our coach now pointing in the other direction, we could not help recalling President Nelson Mandela's poignant words to the Organization of African Unity shortly after his inauguration.
We were held out as the outstanding example of the beneficiaries of charity, because we became the permanent victims of famine, of destructive conflicts, and of the pestilences of the natural world. On our knees, because history, society, and nature had defeated us. Africa cries out for a new birth.